Okay, so my name is Sophie Daschuk. In my presentation, we'll look at the social, individual, and political bodies and how these bodies clash and interact when attempting to define death. So, all humans have a unique and subjective experience of being alive, and so we may all have a different meaning of what it means to die. Things like religion, culture, values, and ideology will have an effect on how one lives. For instance, people who live in Indonesia in third world conditions will have a completely different experience of life than someone like me, a wealthy middle class university student in Canada. With these diverse ways of living, there comes diverse ways of dying. Our anthropological bodies may also help us understand the variety of meanings that come with death. With these diverse meanings of death, clashes between them do occur. For instance, we may all have the right to our own beliefs, but as citizens of Canada, we must legally oblige by Canadian rules surrounding death. So, the aim of this PowerPoint is to try to determine which anthropological body holds more power in determining when death occurs in Canada. So before we dive into this, we need an understanding of the anthropological bodies. The individual body is the one that Western medicine focuses on. It is our organic components, our tissues, organs, and bones. Our individual body is the body that ages and needs to be maintained and cleaned throughout one's life. In short, it is the physical and natural part of us. The social body represents the society in which one lives. It is created through interactions with others, and it is a reflection of one's cultural identity. For instance, in Western society, the social body is shown through physical attributes. We can, with caution, tell if a person has a feminine or masculine identity by the way they dress. The social body is one's identity, which is crafted and recreated throughout one's life. It includes one's religion, cultural and social values, and relationships with others. So the political body. This is the part of us that is regulated and controlled by political and social powers. Just like in George Orwell's 1984, it is the body under surveillance, controlled, molded, and regulated by a political power. An example of this would be the policies and laws surrounding women's bodies. The state, by making pro-life laws, regulates and controls our political bodies. So now let's look at how these bodies clash and interact when defining death in Canada. So first, what is death? As I've said before, death is subjective and will have different meanings for different people. In the reading, The Meaning of Death, Cho and Herring discuss the different meanings that surround death. They mention that brainstem death, which occurs when a person cannot breathe or live without machines, and they cease to have a conscious life. Another widely accepted definition of death is the end of cardiac function, which occurs when the heart stops. The beating heart is a symbol of life and thus should be the symbol of death. There's also the death of every cell, which is really just ensuring one is dead by waiting until everything in and out of the body is dead. So all of these possible definitions of death are valid. However, depending on where you live, there may be a legal definition of death, in which case one may not be able to die in the way they wish. In Canada, for instance, there is a legal definition which states a person is dead when an irreversible cessation of all that person's brain functions has occurred. In other words, it's when the brainstem dies. Now, this is the political definition, but does it align with the social definition of death in Canada? So, for the most part, yes, the most accepted definition of death in Canada is the legal definition. But Canada is a multicultural nation. Therefore, people from vastly different realities, cultures, and understandings of life live here. And so many people do not agree with this legal definition. So let's look at an example of these differing worldviews and how they affect our thoughts on death. Death in Japan is widely viewed as when the heart stops working. This is due to their belief that the individual is a social being, meaning that they are because of their relationships with others. Brain death does not make sense in this sociocentric society because others' roles, responsibilities, and identity towards the brain dead person are still working. Instead, in Japan, the widely accepted definition of death is end of cardiac arrest. In Canada, we view the person as an individual, meaning that they are because of their individuality, which we believe is situated in the brain. When brain death occurs, the individual is gone, and all that is left is the physical body, an organic machine that no longer holds the individual. Individuals in Japan live in a different social world than those in Canada. So it only makes sense that these two vastly different cultures will have vastly different meanings of death. So now let's look at what happens when these differing worldviews of death clash. So this clash occurs when an individual's beliefs surrounding death conflict with the legal definition of death. In this case, an individual's social body may be attached to certain beliefs surrounding death. However, they are legally bound to follow another definition due to their political body. Here's an example. Shalom was declared dead in a Toronto hospital. His family, however, stated that according to his religion, he was not yet dead. Orthodox Judaism considers death to be complete cardiac and respiratory failure, which is contrary to the legal Canadian definition of death. So, Shalom's political body belonged to Canada, and so he legally died when his brainstem died. His social body was affiliated with Orthodox Judaism, which holds a different view of death. In Shalom's case, his political body determined his death. A question to ask is, was his social body killed by the political? If so, that would mean in Canada, the political body does hold more power than the social and individual bodies of a person. So let's dive into this a little bit more. So the legal and mainstream definition of death in Canada puts little importance on the individual. When a brainstem death occurs, the individual body is actually fine. It is running like a machine should, except that it is plugged into an actual mechanical machine. What has died when the brainstem dies is essentially our soul, the part of us that retains culture, experiences, and religion, which is what creates our social body. So in Canada, we tend to think that without our social bodies, we are essentially no longer human. Instead, we are a state-owned organic machine. Although it is the loss of our social bodies that determine if we are legally dead in Canada, it is our political bodies that make us obliged by this, thus making the political body the most influential in determining death in Canada. So, to conclude, there will never be a universal understanding of death, and nor should there be. There are plenty of different worldviews, and we need to accept that. In Canada, our political body, which is controlled by the state, will have the last say in when death occurs. For the death to happen, there needs to be a death of the social body, the one which is created by experiences, religion, and worldviews. All that are left after the death of our social bodies are individual and political body. The individual body holds little power in Canada as it is viewed as a machine without a soul. Thus, it is the political body that dictates life and death in our country. Thank you for listening.